Now what will it be? Death or exile?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another review from the Film Exiles podcast. Today, we have the 2019 release, Light of My Life. Now, this film is set in a dystopian world where a plague called the female plague has killed most of the women in the world. And this story centers around a father and a daughter who are living in isolation, and he's trying to protect his daughter from everything around them. You know, women are very, very rare, so it's dangerous for her to be found. This film goes through their trials and tribulations. It's a survival story, it's a home invasion story, and it's a fairy tale as well. Did you know that Elizabeth Moss, the woman who plays the mother of the daughter and the wife of Casey Affleck's character in flashbacks, she also stars in another feminist dystopian production, The Handmaid's Tale. I thought that was very interesting to have, that link. So joining me today is Chris, as usual, the good doctor. Chris, say hello to the people.
Hello, very excited to talk about this film. It's a really, I can't really explain it with a few words. It's a really beautiful film, I'll say. But not in the regular sense that you would describe something as being beautiful. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to discussing this film. Okay,
so the first thing we'll talk about is, we'll talk about the acting performances. Then I think we should talk about cinematography. Let's talk about the score. Let's talk about the story, and then we'll end on a bit of a spoilery note, going into some deep analysis. But we'll let you know when it's spoiler included for your safety. So the acting performances, Chris, what stuck out to you? How would you grade the acting performances?
So basically this film is heavily centered on the two protagonists. So Casey Affleck's character, which is the father, and Anna Pniowski, I hope I pronounced that right, is Rag from Raggedy Ann, who is the daughter. Yeah. And these two really carry the film. Okay. I would say that Casey Affleck's character carries the bulk of the film. It's essentially through his eyes that we see what happens during the events of the film. And I think Casey Affleck did a wonderful job. Understated, nothing over the top. There is some action in this film. There is drama in this film, but everything is done with class. One of my favorite individual performances to date. I think Anna, who played Rag, also did a wonderful job. She's not been in many films, some TV work, and a couple of feature-length films, but I think as a young actress, she really held her own with Casey Affleck, and both of those performances were brilliant. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think that they both did a great job. I don't have anything more to add to that. I mean, Casey Affleck is an Academy Award winner, and he showed his class in this one. He has to go through like a range of like happiness, grief, sadness, fear, tension, anger, and aggression. He does everything, and he relays every emotion very well. And the young female actress also does an exceptional job. Now let's talk about the cinematography, how the film is shot, what it looks like. I'm a very visual person, and this is one of the most important things to me that separates a lot of like prestige high quality films from a lot of generic sort of average usual mass marketed films. And the cinematographer for this film is Adam Arcapal. I hope I'm getting that right. It's a very unusual name, but he's done some really good films. Like if you look back at what he's done, he did Macbeth. He also did True Detective and Assassin's Creed. And those films are absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Like no matter what you feel of those films, they are like really beautiful films. And this film, in terms of its cinematography, it's nothing over the top. It's not a lot of flash. It's not, you're not going to get, something like, a Larry Fong type of film or a Roger Deakins, type of film. But it's very, very effective. It's a dystopian world, but they don't go...
It's a world we recognize.
But it's a world that we recognize. So it's not like a Mad Max type of dystopian world. I'd say in terms of the look, it's quite similar to Children of Men.
Yes.
In terms of the look.
Good shout.
Yeah, a lot of like, sort of foresty regions. Whenever they're in the city, it's a little bit gray and drab, but not too much.
And ironically, a kind of similar,
of course,
story as well.
Yeah. My favorite shot in the film is there's a sequence where the Casey Affleck's character and daughter Rag are in the woods, and just the framing of it, because the aspect ratio for this one is very different. It's not the normal 2.9 by 1 or
it's
16 by 9.
It's a little bit boxy. A little bit narrower than 16 by 9.
A lot narrower. There are no black bars on top and at the bottom. It's not wide frame. It's a little bit boxy. So there's a lot more height. Yeah. And in this particular scene I'm talking about, because they're tall trees, you really see the trunks of the trees, and it's just like such interesting composition. But that stuck out in my mind. Are there any of the scenes
a couple
cinematography
actually
stuck out in your mind?
A couple, like, so the first one that sticks out in my mind is there's a sequence towards the end of the film where some assailants are trying, because obviously we're talking about one of the few girls in the world. If she becomes discovered, she's going to be in danger. And there's a sequence towards the end where some assailants are coming for the daughter, and there's a shot which comes down through the attic, because they were hiding in the attic, and you see Casey Affleck character going through this attic door, this attic hole, and the camera remains up in the attic, and you can see a little bit of the fighting, but you hear a lot of noise and crashing and banging, and you don't really see much. And it really raises really raises the tension. I thought it was stunning. And there's another one, another really highly intense sequence in the middle of the film. Again, some assailants coming to visit.
That was quite a bit.
You can see a theme. And it's just, everything is shot from the room that Casey Affleck's in. So when the assailants come from the garden, you can't really see them because they are behind a kind of dirty window. But when Affleck sees them, it clears up, and then you see them as well. So everything is like from Affleck's, not really his point of view, but we are following Affleck's character, and we can see how tense he is and how agitated he is, but also the thought processes in his mind are starting to tick. And that's a very key point of this whole film. And actually during this sequence, the score is really ratcheting up this tension. So the score is done by Daniel Hart, and he uses a lot of air instruments. Like, I don't know if it's a trombone or an oboe, but it's
throaty, wind instruments, almost growling type of noises, and they just ratchet up the tension a lot. The way that I talk about score is, do I want to go after the film and listen to it over and over again? Was it effective? Was it unmemorable? That kind of thing. I would say it was very effective, but it wasn't really the type of score that I'm going to go buy or anything like that. Yeah. But it was effective.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was a track on there that I'd put on the radio, put on my car radio,
and listen to. Yeah.
But for the film, its effectiveness
it was very effective.
Off the charts for me.
Yeah. As for the story and the plot, it's a very, very interesting story. It starts out as one thing. What I'll say is it starts out as one thing, and it ends up being another. It's not your typical dystopian, sort of like a father figure or a protector taking a child somewhere. You think it's that.
Yeah.
It starts out as that, and it ends up as something else. So I thought that, in terms of story and plot, although it's a slow-moving film, it is an indie film.
Deliberately paced, for sure.
It takes patience from the audience. It takes a mature mind to sit with it. But in my opinion, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's quite unusual in a crowded subgenre.
Yeah. As far as the plot goes, we start off in the woods, so we kind of get the initial kind of picture of what their life is. So it's like what you mentioned in the synopsis earlier. They're kind of on the outskirts of society. They're not really interested in participating in society. And then they keep, it's a constant search for safety, essentially. Mm-hmm. So they'll move from one place to another. They kind of come into town a little bit to do a bit of shopping. Shopping. It's not really, they're not walking into a supermarket or anything.
They go to get rations.
Yeah, they go to get rations and stuff like that. But it is always a search for safety. So even when they do go into town, Rag is disguised as a boy. Her hair is always cut short. And that kind of results in some language which might be distasteful to a young woman being exposed to. And there are some kind of funny, awkward scenes in the film where the father is trying to describe to the daughter about, the birds and the bees and all of that kind of stuff. And it is pretty entertaining. This film does have a few laughs, and it's natural. It's not forced. So, plot points. As we said, it's just a constant search for safety. They go from one house to another house, to the woods, to this place, to that place. And it's always trying about being, keeping Rag safe.
Yeah. Well, next up, we're going to go into a bit of spoilers. So we have to give a spoiler alert, but we'll very, very briefly, and without going into too much details, talk about some themes in the film. A very clever device that is used in the film is that of a story within a story. So there's a story that's told and serves as a metaphor for a lot of the themes of the film. And it's very similar to what is done in Watchmen, which is, done by Alan Moore. And in the film Watchmen, relayed by Zack Snyder as well. And it's a little fable about two characters, a protector and a man and a wife, but it's a protector and a protectee, so to speak, and their journey to get on Noah's Ark. Is there anything that you want to say in detail about it?
Yeah, for starters, it's about Art. Art the fox and his protectee Goldie the fox. And he really makes such a beautiful story for his daughter to try and take her out of the world. But in his message, in his story, there's always like a life lesson. However, there's a few twists. The story takes a few twists and turns, and obviously that is reflected in the main in the main film. So Art isn't the strongest fox. He isn't got the sharpest teeth or the biggest claws or the shiniest mane or anything like that. What art is a scientist. He's a thinker. He's a tinkerer, and that kind of reflects Casey Affleck's character. He isn't the strongest. He isn't a hunter. He isn't a fan of guns. He isn't a violent person. But what he does have is this never-ending, undying will to protect his daughter, and he will go far and beyond to save his daughter. So there's some sequences of violence in the film when he's fighting 3 people, and there's no way he should win, but he does, because he has that. His will to save his daughter is far greater than their will to take a bit of, take the house over or to steal some food or anything like that. So that was kind of like one, and that reflects Art's story in Art's arc, and he has an insatiable will to save Goldie. So Goldie goes on the. Goldie gets a place on Noah's Ark, and Art doesn't. So he builds his own ark. But while he's building his own little ark, he has dreams about Goldie dying and how scared he is, and he has basically nightmares of losing Goldie. That kind of gives us an insight into Casey Affleck's character's psyche, that he dreams at night, or he has nightmares. His worst nightmares are about losing his daughter. And I think it's a beautiful story, but it takes a twist.
It takes a twist. So the twist in the story is that at the end of the day, the protectee, the daughter, is the one in the story who saves Art. And that reflects the story in the film, in which the daughter, who you think is the protected one, becomes a very active participant in the heroic story. She participates in saving the day, and it's a very powerful theme, and it's one that really sort of like touched my heart, because we're talking of like a father who is just trying to protect his daughter, and trying to prepare her for the world, and her changing the story, because when he tells her the bedtime story, she says, well, Dad, no, that's not how it happens.
Actually, it was.
She actually, that shows, it's meta commentary on the fact that she's becoming a powerful person, and she, by her own will, can change her own story, and can take control of her own destiny, and she does in the film. And I think that was very cleverly done. Was a very interesting device, added another layer to the storytelling, and just made the film more brilliant.
Yeah. One more little thing is how it has a commentary on I wouldn't say gender stereotypes, but how we live in a very masculine orientated world, where, so the story of Art's arc, when Casey Affleck is telling it, he says, he tells his daughter, let me tell you a story about a female fox called Goldie. And then all of the story was about Art. It was about saving Goldie, but it wasn't about Goldie.
Yeah.
Now when Rag tells her father, this is how actually the story ends. It was about Goldie, because Goldie fixed the ark and saved the day, but everyone gave credit to Art.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of a commentary on modern society as well, that a lot of the time women are the heroes of our stories, but men take the credit. And I think that was beautifully written by Casey Affleck, who has had troubles of his own, and he has been writing this film for 10 years. And that kind of gives me a real insight into the attitudes and values of this human being. And I think sometimes, without going into any scandal or anything, sometimes how people act tells us more about them rather than
the narratives
that surround them. And I don't want to talk any more about that because obviously no one knows any details. But I think that the way he wrote this story and how he wrote about female empowerment so subtly and beautifully.
That's exactly what I was about to say. A lot of times,
was amazing.
A lot of times, writers try to
bash you over the head,
interject stories. It's not inject, interject, because it's an interjection. Stories with themes of female empowerment and
or any other social issues,
or any other social issues, whether it's racial, whether it's sexual identity, sexual orientation, and it's done so clumsily, so in such a ham-fisted.
Like one of the examples I'll give you is on the recent X-Men film, where it's we should be called the X-Women, and it's crass. Yeah.
It's crass.
And it does a disservice to the importance of the message.
Yeah. No, because it's a worthy message, but this film shows an example of how it is done with finesse and with craft. Yeah. And I love the film for it. I think it's a shining example of how you do a story like that. So thank you guys very much for listening to this podcast. I love this film. It's one of my favorites of the year. I'm going to have to go back and think of what my top 5 films of the year are, but I have the feeling that this is going to be in my top 5 of the year. I'm not going to give it a grade. I don't think it's like a masterpiece, but I think it's a very good movie. It's one of my favorite films of the year. I'll leave it at that. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to echo your sentiment here. I think it is easily one of my favorite films. It has a bit of everything. It has a bit of humor. It has drama. It has action. It's a worthwhile film. It has a message.
It was so tense. Oh my god!
We had to pause. We had to pause the film.
My
halfway
heart
through.
was beaten. Wow.
Yeah.
I have to give the director a lot of credit because
absolutely
he was able to transfer the emotions that the characters were feeling, especially Casey Affleck, to me in terms of...
Casey was the director, wasn't he?
Well, he was the director. Look at that.
Yeah.
Because in a situation like that, you can only imagine that they can never feel at ease. Every single moment of levity, every single respite, every single oasis, there's still danger in the back of your mind. For the character, for Casey Affleck's character, he was always vigilant. Yeah. He could never relax.
Yeah, you always saw him looking around.
He was always setting things up to make sure they could escape or they could fight if they needed to. And I felt the same way. Even when there were scenes in which it felt like, oh, all right, this is a break. My heart was still racing because I felt someone was about to burst through a door, come from a corner. They were going to have to leave, and that's
an expert film. Yeah. It's an expert film, expertly made. Yeah. I can't give it a grade. I try not to grade films.
I like grading films, but I can't grade this film.
All I'll say is watch this film. It's for a mature audience, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film.
Yeah. It really is kind of a fairy tale. So thank you guys for listening to this. This one went on for a bit long, but I feel like this film is worthy of such impassioned, lengthy discussion. I have been Lupe. You can find me at Live Love Lupe on Twitter and on Vero. Chris, where can the good people find your toxicity?
Toxicity always available at Vinaldo7 on Twitter. Not so much toxicity on Vero.
There you go. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.
Peace.